All right, here we go. Welcome into Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin. Thank you for tuning in. Well, Big Ten Media Days has come and gone. So that means fall camp is quickly approaching, and that it is. They are starting up fall camp. Iowa is on Wednesday already. Cannot believe how fast the summer is flying by, but here we are. We are less than 5 weeks away from Iowa taking on Albany inside historic Kinnick Stadium. So what I'm going to do today is go over the Big Ten Media Day, specifically looking at just Iowa. Obviously, there was a lot of storylines elsewhere, but we're going to focus in on Iowa and what Kirk had to say and the three players that went down with him, Logan Jones, Ethan Hurkett, and Cohen Entringer. They were there the last day, day 3 in Vegas. Big Ten is so big now that they got to have 3 days to do this. And so Iowa was down there the last day. And what I enjoy about Big Ten Media Days is it gives us fans an opportunity to kind of hear an update before we get into fall camp. You know, some guys progressing, any injuries, different things like that. You get to hear from the three players and, you know, how they feel. And now it's really going to be up until Iowa Media Days, which is in a few weeks from now, where we will get a further update on how things are going those first few weeks in fall camp. So that's what I enjoy about Big Ten Media Days. Do you get a whole lot out of it? It depends, because you have to kind of read between the lines with Kirk, because he doesn't really say a whole lot, but he will say some small things that you have to jot down. And since he doesn't really give you the full answer sometimes, when he does bring up like a name, like he brought up Jalen Watson, for example, that you got to jot down because he doesn't do that very often. So when he does, you got to take notice. And so that is what I'm going to do today, is just give some big takeaways from the media days. So the first thing, and this was something we knew about going into media days, was Iowa was not going to release a pre-camp depth chart. Kirk Ferentz talked about it, I think, after the spring game. He said, you know, in the past, you had players, parents getting mad when their kid wasn't listed as a starter and just different things like that. And we as fans tend to overreact to something so meaningless. I mean, if you really think about it, a depth chart going into fall camp literally means nothing, but I am even guilty of it in the past where you don't see a name or you see a guy that you thought is going to be a starter and he's a backup on it. Doesn't matter. You still got all fall camp to work those things out. And I think going into this year, you look at this team, I really like this roster. However, there are position groups, there are spots that will need to be determined in fall camp, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. That doesn't mean that it's like, oh, that position group is bad. No, you just got some guys that I think could all be capable starters. I mean, you look at the cornerback position, right? I think CB1 is TJ Hall, but what about CB2? Deshaun Lee, who's played in the last couple years? Is it going to be Shaheed Barrows from South Dakota, who was very productive there, but obviously going from FCS to FBS? Or is it going to be Jalen Watson, a young kid that even saw the field last year and did really good in special teams? So it's position groups like that where fall camp, this is going to be very important. Left tackle is another example as well. So I don't mind the no depth chart. I think obviously as us fans are like, you know, Tyler and I doing a podcast, it's nice having one because you can kind of dissect it and go down the list. But I think it's a good idea. Let's wait until we get into week 1 against Albany, because I think at that point, after going 4 or 5 weeks into fall camp, you're going to have a good idea on who the left tackle is going to be, who's going to be CB2, who's going to be, you know, the main guy, that wide receiver. So that is the first takeaway. All right, let's go into some position groups, and let's start with the most important position, and that is the quarterback play. We as Iowa fans are just desperate to just sometime have a average, competent, solid quarterback, and we are hoping Mark can be the guy for us this year. We obviously have to wait to see it because, you know, what he did at South Dakota State was great, won 2 natties, had over 10,000 yards, a lot of touchdowns, played in a lot of games, but can he translate that from there to FBS, to Big Ten, where, let's face it, defenses are faster, bigger, more athletic? We'll have to wait to see. But the one thing that I did get out of what Kirk had to say about Mark was, I think the vibes and the confidence are very, very high with him. And I think his leadership, Kirk even had a quote that said, I've had meetings with our leadership groups during the summer, and it's just clear all the other guys, how they look at him and how they listen when he talks. It's not because he told them to. Guys just feel that. Players know and kids know. They know faster than anybody, and our players know who he is and what he is. That tells me that he has earned the respect and the trust from his teammates and from the coaches. Now we just got to see him on the field and see how he does out there. And even Kirk said that, right? Because we haven't really had a chance to really see him a whole lot because he was out there in the spring. He's obviously been participating in 7-on-7s and the summer workouts, but fall camp is going to be a great time to really see him in live action, playing with pads and things like that. So that was number one. That was the first thing. And then Kirk just talking about how the quarterback room has been upgraded compared to the last 2 years. And, anything could be upgraded over 2 years ago when we had Deacon Hill, and man, that year was horrible. But it is good to hear that he thinks the quarterback room is definitely upgraded compared to the last 2 years. He mentioned the quarterback battle that's going to be happening in 2026, and that is Hank Brown and not Jackson Stratton, but Jeremy Alinsky from Wake Forest. It kind of sounds like he has already jumped Jackson in the depth chart order. And so we're going to have a kind of a quarterback competition going into 2026 with Hank Brown and Jeremy Alinsky. And so it'll be interesting to see what Jackson Stratton does. Probably think that he's probably going to transfer out after this next year, and going into 2026, it will be a competition between Hank Brown and Jeremy Alinsky. I think this is a big year for both of those guys to really improve themselves going into next year, because I think for Iowa, for Tim Lesser, for Kirk, I think the plan is we kind of want to stop using the transfer portal. Like, we want to build within, and these two guys are young, right? Hank Brown has 3 more years left. Jeremy Alinsky, maybe 4. I could be wrong there, but a lot of years left for both of those guys. And so if you can keep improving those two guys going into next year, that's a good problem to have. So the next takeaway, and this might be the biggest thing that I got out of Big Ten Media Days, is what Kirk had to say about the wide receiver room. Because if you think about it, this is such a critical piece for Iowa's success in 2025. You're not beating Indiana. You're not beating Penn State. You're not beating Oregon if you don't have some good weapons on the outside and being able to pass down the field. You need to have good playmakers. And so the time is now for this Iowa wide receiver room. It's been so bad for so long to finally take that next step. And I recorded an episode about a month and a half ago going over this room. And I really feel confident that we can really take that next step this year. You got 8 guys that are all capable, that you feel comfortable with going out there. Are they all Big Ten caliber type of guys? Probably not, but they are now more experienced. I mean, last year we were just very young. You got some guys that are seniors. You got some guys that are younger. You have a guy like KJ Parker who you haven't even seen what he is capable of doing. So I'm just really pumped for this room. Obviously, just like the quarterback room, got to wait to see it to believe it. Who knows if they're going to do good or not? But what I thought was interesting is what Kirk had to say about it. And he said, I've talked about the offensive line. I felt like a year ago we were getting there and it would start coming together. So I'm going to pause there for a second. So you go back to last year at this time, the offensive line going into 2024, it was kind of like a make it or break it year. Like we got to get better. I mean, it's been so bad for so long. Injuries and different things like that obviously didn't help, but it was just not good. And we went into last year like, can we finally have a decent offensive line? And Kirk said, I felt like a year ago we were getting there and it would start coming together. And boy, did it. The offensive line was great last year. Really, really good. So then he goes off and says, it's almost like a mirror image with the receivers. Okay, that sounds like good news, right? Because if he thinks the wide receiver room is similar to the offensive line room like last year, because the wide receiver room has been so bad for so long, if he's slowly starting to see it come together and he thinks, this could be the year that kind of jumpstarts it, I will take that in a freaking heartbeat. If our wide receiver room is as good as what the offensive line was last year going into last year, I will take that in a heartbeat. And then he goes on and says, they're playing really well. I really like our group right now. That position is going to be very interesting. And this is something we've heard a lot, from reporters, from beat writers, from inside sources, that they are very, very high on this room. And they really do believe year 2 under Tim Lester, bringing in Warren Ruggiero, getting, an actual quarterback that hopefully can throw the ball down the field. They are very high that they can take that next step. And once again, just so critical for Iowa's success in 2025, given the schedule. All right, let's go to offensive line. I think right now the big question mark is that left tackle position is still a mystery, still up in air. Jack Dotzler, Trevor Locke, or Bryce George, the D2 transfer All-American. Who's it going to be? That is going to be the big question. I think we feel very comfortable at the 4 other position groups with Bo Stevens, Logan Jones, Cade Peeper, and James Dunker. It's really that left tackle spot. And come Iowa media days, to hear who is kind of the guy, right? Because I feel like by then they might have an idea. And then during Kids Day, who's starting? And I think at that point, once again, I don't think it'll be solidified at that point, but it'll give you a good idea on who the left tackle is. Just like the wide receiver room, we have to hit on this, whoever it is. Like whoever ends up being the starting left tackle, we need to make sure that guy is ready to go. I think all three are capable. If I was a betting man and someone asked me right now, you had to place money on it, I'm going to go out and say it's probably going to be Bryce George. I might be in the minority there because I think if you go on like 24/7, different things like that, a lot of those beat writers, they kind of think it might be, Jack Dotzler or Trevor Locke. But I just think the experience with Bryce George is going to pay off. And I think towards the end of fall camp, I think he's really going to start coming together. And I think he will be the guy. And he has the makeup. I mean, he's 6'6", 315. Once again, going from D2, we talked about, Mark Gronowski going from FCS. I mean, imagine D2 to the Big Ten. But the one good thing with Bryce George is he's going to be practicing against one of the best defensive lines in the country, right? All during fall camp. And so if he can do solid there, then you're feeling pretty good entering the season. And so speaking of the defense line, let's switch over to this room. We are in a very good place when it comes to the defensive line. Ethan Hurkett talked about, and this is something that I got out of him when he was talking with the media on Thursday, is he had a few different things that he said. He thinks Max Llewellyn is still ascending, which, I mean, boy, Max Llewellyn, one of the best defensive ends in the country. And if he's still ascending, watch out, right? You saw what he did last year and how good he did. I can't imagine, the 2025 campaign. He thinks Brian Allen will have a great year. He thinks he could be like what Max Llewellyn was going into last year where, people knew about him, but he really took that next step last year. And so if Brian Allen can be like Max Llewellyn last year, because he's going to be our third option, right? You have Ethan Hurkett, you have Max Llewellyn. Brian Allen's going to be that situational guy that's going to be coming in and out. And if he can be like Max Llewellyn last year, that is really good news for us. Really loves the two new transfers at the defensive tackle spot in Bryce Hawthorne and Jonah Pace. I've heard nothing but good things about both those guys, especially Bryce Hawthorne. I mean, all you have to do is listen to Tyler Barnes in his interview a couple weeks ago where he said getting Bryce Hawthorne was like the steal of the century. I mean, what does that tell you? I think getting both of these guys were so big for us. I mean, it was very crucial that we went out and we got somebody or got two guys in particular that can really help us. And I told Tyler this many times. I think when you look at the defense from last year, obviously the secondary wasn't very good, but I think the depth at the defense tackle spot really hurt us as the year went on. I think the X factor at the defensive position, before I go on a little bit further here, is Jeremiah Pittman, because no one really talks about him. And he just hasn't really taken that next step yet. And if you told me right now that Jeremiah Pittman really contributes, we are in very good shape, because then at that point, you got Aaron Graves, you got Bryce Hawthorne, you got Jonah Pace, and then you have Jeremiah Pittman. That's really solid. Ethan Hurkett also mentioned how he likes what he's seen from the younger guys. All redshirt freshmen, by the way. Joseph Anderson, who's gained 18 pounds. Chima Chineke, who's gained 20 pounds. And Devin Kennedy, who's up 10 pounds at 275. He really likes what he's seen out of those guys. And then he even brought up a freshman 5-star in Yosei Epinenza. So he thinks all of those guys might see a role this upcoming season, which I think is kind of important to hear about that, right? I think that's good news, because once again, when you think the defensive line, you think of Ethan Hurkett and Max Llewellyn and Brian Allen on the outside, and then you think of Bryce Hawthorne, Aaron Graves, Jonah Pace, and then you start bringing up some of these younger dudes who, I mean, I said it from the time we got these guys, I was like, this class, give it a couple years, not going to be right away, but give it a couple years, they are going to be special. I mean, I love the upside on all these guys. And so Joseph Anderson, right? He needs to get a little bit bigger, but he did gain 18 pounds. Devin Kennedy, he was a guy that started playing football, I think his junior year. And he really took a huge leap his senior year. And that's kind of why he was under recruited. I'm really excited for him. I'm excited for Chima Chineke, out of Texas. I remember seeing something about how some big national reporter talked about how big of a steal it was that Iowa got him, how he kind of flew under the radar. So I'm really high on those guys. And then you obviously bring in 5-star Jose Epineza. I think this room is in a much better spot compared to last year at this time, which is good, because if your defensive line is good, it's going to only help your linebacker room that you're a little iffy on, and your secondary. So let's go to the secondary now. Let's start with the corners. I kind of mentioned this earlier in this episode, but I do think CB1 is pretty much locked down with TJ Hall. It's really that other CB2 who's going to be the starter. And I think it's going to be down to these three guys: Deshaun Lee, Shaheed Barros, and Jalen Watson. Cohen Endringer likes what he sees in Shaheed Barros so far. But Kirk Ferentz talked about how both Hall and Deshaun Lee have really taken big steps this past spring. And then once again, going back to what I said earlier, KF even brought up Jalen Watson's name, which I thought was pretty interesting. So I think they like what they see, but it's just all about who is going to be just slightly better and is going to be the solidified starter. I think going back to last year, we were rotating so many guys out. One game it was Nestor. The next game it was Hall. The next game it was Deshaun Lee. Not saying that's a bad problem, but man, I really want to go into this year where it's TJ Hall and Shaheed Barros, right? Like those are the two guys, or TJ Hall and Jalen Watson, right? Or Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall. And who knows? Maybe TJ Hall gets beat out, right? Like I don't know if it's a penciled in TJ Hall as a solidified starter, but I think just kind of what I have gathered, I think TJ Hall has really taken that next step. And I think, this is his final year at Iowa. I think this is a year that he is going to put all the pieces in place. And I think he will be the solidified CB1. And then at safety, I think the biggest question mark, and it's not really a question mark, it's more just like, I wonder who it's going to be. Who's going to be the cash player and who's going to be the strong safety? Is it going to be Lutmar or Cohen? I personally believe that Cohen will be the cash and Lutmar will be the strong safety. And then when obviously we're in a 4-3, Cohen will then move to strong safety. And then I think X going to free safety was the move. I think it will just help him. I think he will be way better at the free safety position. And so I really do like this safety room. I think it's an upgrade to last year, frankly. I really do. I love Cohen Entringer. Castro was great. Don't get me wrong. Castro was really good. I think Cohen has way more upside. I think Lutmar has way more upside compared to Quinn Schulte. And then I just think X going to free safety is only going to help. So safety room, cash, I think we're solid on. I think corner, in my opinion, can we at least, obviously I want both sides to be great, but can we at least be solid on one side? And then the other side, it's kind of an open competition going into fall camp. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are some of the things that I got out of it. Once again, I think the biggest thing, or the two biggest things, was Kirk talking about the wide receiver room. I mean, when you look at that room, you got 8 guys, once again, that you feel really comfortable with. And I'm really high on this room. And so Kirk talking about that, I think, was the biggest takeaway. Obviously, another one was just talking more about Mark Gronowski and, how he feels really good about him and where he's at. And obviously very positive updates with him too, with the whole injury thing, right? Obviously he's been cleared for a few months now, but just hearing how everything's been so good with him. Now it's just seeing him on the field and hopefully, he can be what we think he can be here at Iowa. And so, yeah, that will do it for this episode. I do think this team has that sneaky confidence that they can put it all together and have a good year. If the defense can be what it usually is under Phil Parker, and if the offense can take that next step under Tim Lester in year 2 with hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully, a competent quarterback with some playmakers on the outside with one of the best offensive lines in the country. Yes, the schedule is brutal, but I think we can have a fun year. Don't know how good it's going to be, but I'm going to use the word fun. I think it could be a fun year. That will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening. Have a good week and go Hawks.